Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast. My name is Jed and we are reading the Phaedo, which is why we have this title. As we've been talking about in the podcast, we are going through the second reading of the Phaedo now. And our first reading gave us a lot to focus on, to repeat and remember, reflect on, review, apply to our own lives, make it meaningful, make it significant to us by applying it to our own development, our own understanding, our own state of mind, our own self. And in doing so, we discovered that we have to read it a second time because there are layers to learning in philosophy. The first one, you could say, we did Socrates' level. Socrates, of course, is at the level of trust. That's the language he uses when he talks about coming to a conclusion. And of course, that is insufficient. He was thrown into a tiz when he trusted the logos, but it was his personal religious mythology was brought up that conflicted with the trust in the logos, even though he was doing very well with his trust, to the point where he could remember the arguments in the dialectic to show that learning is remembering. So he did well with his trust, but of course there's no evidence, at least that I can see, that he moved beyond there. So that's an interesting puzzle. Why did Socrates not learn? Simmias, on the other hand, is not content with just trusting, as he said. Doesn't care if a lot of people will believe what's said because he has a low opinion of human frailty, as he puts it. He says how frail, it's a polite way of putting it, we might say, the many are. And so for us, at least for now, he might represent the level of movement to understanding. And of course, it was Simmias who wanted to go through the stages, the steps of that dialectic, that learning is remembering, so he could understand it for himself. So we could characterize our level of reading right now as the level of Simmias. And formally, we can recognize that as the level of philosophy, or what we might more accurately call it, philodianoia, because philosophy definitionally means love of wisdom, and wisdom is dianoia applied to one of the four virtues, or five virtues, as we discovered the mysterious fifth virtue in our first reading. Now, just fixing up some things on my... Okay, that's good. So true philosophy we could call philodianoia, or even more accurately, or maybe if that's our new definition, having gone through the text, we come back around, and so you could say we've done a dialectic on philosophy, in that we started with a definition, we went through a development through our reading, following the arguments, following the stages of the arguments. And then what happens at the end of the dialectic? You come back around to the conclusion. So you come back, you have a conclusion that takes you back to the start to understand the definition in a new way. You end up with a new definition that has changed because of your going through the reasoning. So our new definition for philosophy would be Philodianoia. The love of a certain kind of understanding of the logos through the structure of the dialectic directed towards the realm of being. Or, as Socrates put it, talking from his own personal experience as a young student, the second search for causes. What's the cause of this physical world? It can't be physical itself. It must be something to do with mind, or being. So, a new definition of philosophy could be Philodianoia. Now, don't take my word for it. Come up with your own. Now, after we have a definition, we have to follow it up with a demonstration. How would that function? How would it demonstrate itself? Or demonstration in dialogue is to give a brief example, not going through it step by step through all the divisions. That's the third stage. If someone said, I don't really understand this, with simply the definition, we would give a simple explanation or a demonstration of that definition. And that, for us, is the art of the dialectic. And the text, it's the art of the logos. But part of reading is solving puzzles. And we came to we noticed some patterns, some clues, some keys, a keyword used once. So we've upgraded art of logos into the art of dialectic. So that would be our demonstration of our new definition. Socrates points out that you start as that level of reading and repeating, reflecting, like you're singing a song to yourself. That functions in two ways: singing away the childhood fears from our false beliefs, like the fear of the boogeyman, and singing to self songs that can work as an incantation. It has a spiritual effect on our state of consciousness. The two words used in the text: purification, removing what's false, and perfection, development up to the higher states of excellence. So that we're the greatest kinds of singers. In the tradition of Apollo, who represents both music and philosophy, the god that's represented in this text. And from loving of learning, we move into Philodianoia, or philosophy. Simius level. Now, we recognize that there is a third stage, philophronesis, where our philosophy culminates in an experience, a direct experience of the realm of being that we can integrate with our education and nurture, with the dialectic, with our understanding and our practice. It's no good just defining it with understanding, but walking the walk too. Demonstration and definition. That's the virtues. So that third level of reading involves reading the text and seeing which logos maintains that state of mind, that state of what we would maybe call today level of enlightenment, a higher state of consciousness that is attached to, remains in contact with, or contains a memory of the realm of being. That would be our third level of reading. And if we were to pick a character in the text that represents that, well, Socrates says that's where he's at, so maybe we could pick Socrates, which is curious, because that would mean Socrates doesn't represent philosophy in the text. Wow. which we can smile at because we recognize that Socrates is kind of considered to be the epitome of philosophy. As it said, everything since Socrates is but a footnote to Socrates, or Socrates is the father of Western thought. He is kind of regarded as the ideal philosopher. So it's funny for us, having read the text in a way that most people haven't been able to, or just haven't been interested in doing. Because we've read the text in this way, we recognize, he's not actually a philosopher at all, which is funny. In one way, we'll agree, yes, he is the ideal philosopher. And if you want to understand the important questions, enter the human race, become rational, figure out, trust, understand, and know the meaning of life, do your purpose, fulfill your destiny, understand what destiny is, know what beauty itself is, know what justice itself is. If you want to learn, evolve in this life or in any other life, then yes, Socrates is the guy to look to. So in one regard, you're right, he is the ideal philosopher in that sense. But technically speaking, he doesn't seem to be at the level of philosophy, does he? He seems to have completed that stage and is at the next level, philophronesis. But of course, part of one of our questions that we've been carrying with us as we've been reading is, why? What makes Socrates ideal? Well, in one sense, we could say, we could use the 3 levels of learning. He's past true learning, and he told us about how he got into it, the second search for causes. He's past that second level, the art of the dialectic. He's demonstrated it very well. He's divided it up into parts so we can figure it out for ourselves. So he's functioning as a good teacher in that way. So he's past the level of philosophy, and he's talking about having been initiated into phronesis, and therefore he has good reason to be of good cheer that he is going to that 6th dimension, having completed his work. And the ticket to that 6th dimension is our nurture and education, the art of the dialectic and its practice, specifically along with that state of phronesis, that connection to being in our state of consciousness, what we might normally call today our enlightenment, which is great because we have demystified that ambiguous term enlightenment. What is enlightenment? Because a lot of European philosophers call their way of thinking, which is very much in the physical world, the age of enlightenment. And I know a lot of people who I've run into who consider themselves smarter than others, who call themselves enlightened, and they are very clearly not. They are very tied to their ignorance of their family. I'm enlightened because I know the true religion, they will say. So it's a very misused term. Of course, with in the last 50 or so years, the introduction of these, maybe a bit more, maybe 80 years, the study of Eastern spirituality in our Western culture gives us more of a glimpse into enlightenment being a certain state of being or consciousness, state of self. But one of the difficulties with Eastern traditions is they don't seem to be in the logos. And we've had fun comparing their meditative yogas or traditions with what we are doing here. What makes it similar and what makes it lacking? Or, in other words, where are they at and where are they stuck? The 2 questions you can ask a person. And the questions that Socrates asks before he begins his dialectic with anybody or with the friends in the text. So we could say, we can say, if we add the logos, we can don't just have to believe that there is something called enlightenment and misuse it according to our false beliefs. We can go through a process of removing what's false, and understanding what enlightenment is specifically. So we've demystified it and given it an even better name, a more specific name or definition. Yes, get rid of the mystification and give it a more specific name. Thumbs up. Phronesis. So that's a level of enlightenment, of course, because that's the level that Socrates is on. So he's not a philosopher. He's a philophronesis person, not philosophia, philophronesis. But there is that super mega question, Dynamite. What is the level above that stage of enlightenment? Which also gives us a new question. Can we therefore understand for ourselves, rationally, objectively, all of the stages of enlightenment? And that would lead us back into the Parmenides, which is a goal for us. We started with the introduction of the Parmenides, the first hypothesis of Parmenides, but there are 8 more to go. Eventually, we'll get back into that text. So, what makes Socrates the best philosopher? Well, you could say he's mastered philosophy, so that's one area. He's completed his purpose, that's another reason. He's at the level of philophronesis, that's another reason. But curiously, he is depicted as almost channeling the logos, contemplating the logos, saying it's easy to contradict Socrates, but the truth is something altogether different. Or the logos, he says he calls in the logos and defends the logos and watches the logos as though it's not him speaking, he is watching. So there's an interesting relationship with the logos, the intelligible principle of reality. And by intelligible, we mean both understandable, dianoia, and directly experienceable or knowable, nous. And perhaps a theory or a working hypothesis we could carry is maybe phronesis is the union of them both. So that's a little joke we can have amongst ourselves. We can agree with people that Socrates is the greatest philosopher, and which is why we have to have our nose in this text. As someone with a mastery of the logos, this has to be what we focus on. This is true learning. This is the material that we problem solve. Sherlock Holmes has to apply his focus and mind to the crime scene, because that's where he'll find the clues. Equally so, this is where we find the clues to figure out what the meaning of life is and how to do it, and specifically to do it, to complete it. And to do that, we have to read it a second time with the spirit of true philosophy, philodianoia. How can we look for the dialectic in as many places as we can, practice it, and make it our own? This is the training for the final boss, which is the true earth at the end. And mythologically, the myth referred to in the text is the Minotaur. So maybe this Minotaur, as the final boss that is slayed by Theseus in the myth that is being celebrated in the text, the reason why Socrates is being kept alive, the purification ritual that the whole city is taking part in, so too, which is why he's not being murdered. No one shall be murdered while this festival and ritual is taking place, because the city is to remain pure, so no one has been murdered by the state. So Socrates' murder is being, a state murder has been delayed in the spirit of this purification, in honor of the god of Apollo, which is music and philosophy. And equally too, maybe we are going through a purification of our problems of what is false by reading this text. And all of that could be mythologized by this guy here, the stuffy down here, the Minotaur, the bull man guy. So that's the final boss of the text, you could say, mythologically represented as the Minotaur, but more specifically, like literally, the realm of being, which is depicted as the true earth, as seen by somebody in that stage of enlightenment or phronesis. And Socrates says, you are like fishies. You're not seeing it the way I see it. You don't realize there's a whole different level of being on this planet. So it's like you are fish. All you know is to look through the sea. You never talked to somebody on the surface, a surface like a person, surface dweller. Don't know that there is such a thing. So this is his metaphor to understand why is it that Socrates can see the true earth and we can't? Well, it's a different level of perception. And our question is, what the heck is that? Well, it can't be the physical perceptions, of course. That would be like seeing through the ocean. So there has to be another sense that we awaken in this activity, our second reading, that will allow us to see the true earth in a different way. Now we are running with the definition of ousia. It's the term given in the Republic as the eye of the soul, ousia. But again, we'll have to go through to the Republic after this. Fortunately, maybe we'll go back, we'll have, after the second reading, we'll have an even deeper mastery of the dialectic, so our beginning of the Republic, we can kill two birds with one stone, have the structure of the dialectic to better remember it so we can repeat it in our first stage of learning, philomathesis. But also we can be hunting for the dialectic in every section of the Republic we read to like speed run the Republic. Get that second reading. And that's where we want to be. That's true philosophy, because that second reading, to read the text with the idea of the dialectic structure in mind and hunting for dialectics everywhere, that's the transition. That's the activity. That's the true spiritual tradition. That's the thing that can trigger our initiation into nous. And is the conditions for that experience of nous, or seeing through the eye of the soul, ousia, into the true being, into the true earth, the realm of being. Just curious, calling the realm of being the true earth, as though our earth is a kind of reflection of it. That's curious. Not only is it the way of getting to that experience, it's the conditions to be able to integrate it. There's no use just having a glimpse without having the art of the dialectic to know how to understand it. In the same way, there's no use just, well, of course it's got some use. It's less useful to just read the Republic unless you have the dialectic in your back pocket, so you have a way of making sense of this text. Structuring it. Is the whole text a dialectic? Is every section a dialectic? Is he giving you clues to do your own dialectic on key things? Are there sections of 4 things or 8 things that we can put together, piece together into a puzzle of using the 8 parts or the 4 parts of the dialectic? Same, so that's how we're reading. That's why we're doing the second reading before we get into the Republic. But so too, the realm of being. No use just having a trip of however you can get it, dreams, drugs, dancing, meditation, breathwork, fasting, childbirth, displays of energy in sport. There are various ways of having a glimpse. But if you don't have the dialectic, you might not be able to recognize it or understand its parts, see the structure, make sense of it, bringing it into a whole. And you might not be able to use that experience, that glimpse, to better do your own dialectic, to better guide your own use of reason and understanding and your state of mind. The dialectic is focused on these things in beauty, justice, goodness. These are all aspects of being. If you have the dialectic in your back pocket, that glimpse, which could be scary or overwhelming, oh, these are the things that we've been talking about in the dialectic. This is the standard to tell me whether or not a dialectic, the reasoned set of arguments, should change our mind or not. It's necessary. I'm seeing necessity itself. It's beautiful. Now I'm seeing beauty itself. So having a glimpse isn't good enough. We need the dialectic in our back pocket to know how to make sense of it, know how to remember it, and know how to use it. Just as when we go into the Republic, we want the dialectic in our back pocket so we know how to make sense of the whole text. Otherwise, it's 10 awfully long books. That's all very confusing. To know how to remember it. Hey, it's going to be easier to remember the dialectic if we can structure it into 4 parts. And within those four parts, see 4 other parts. And in every argument, structure it in 4 parts. It's going to make it easier to remember. That's important. When we have an enlightenment experience of true being, we want to remember it. We don't want to forget it, which is what happens when people just have a glimpse without the dialectic. They forget it in a week or 2. Back to normal. Back to business as usual in the physical world. So we want to have the dialectic in our back pocket when we get into the Republic so we can make sense of it, so we can better remember it, so we can integrate it into our own functioning with the art of the dialectic. The art of all arts. If all arts necessarily require a knowledge, you have to know something you have an art on. And if all arts have an understanding of that, it's no use having a knowledge of the healthy body if you don't understand its parts. You can't be a doctor. And if all arts also necessarily use that ideal or knowledge and the understanding to benefit its subject, then our question is, what is the highest ideal? What is the highest kind of understanding? And what is the highest kind of benefit? Well, the highest ideal would be enlightenment. Directly experience the paradigm of the true earth. The cause of the true earth, the model of the true earth. The highest kind of understanding would be the understanding of all understanding. How can you understand everything? How can you understand mathematical reasoning? How can you understand musical reasoning? How can you understand physics-based reasoning? Well, there should be a paradigm that is applied to each of them, a cause. That's the dialectic. And of course, what is the ideal or excellence or the hyparxis or the highest cause of benefit? Well, we're not just benefiting our ears with music. We're not just benefiting our body with medicine, benefiting the excellence of our body with personal training or with the art of nutrition. We're benefiting our soul, and in a way that extends beyond this lifetime. So a kind of eternal, lasting benefit, which is what makes this the meaning of life, our purpose, or destiny. We call it destiny because it applies to everyone, no matter who you are, whatever house you grew up in, whatever bit of land you were born on, whatever planet you were born on, and in whatever time or universe you were born into. The destiny of all men, all living beings. So the highest benefit, the highest model, the highest kind of understanding, the highest art. So the dialectic as a practice, we can call it the art of dialectic, not only will help us to make sense of the Republic or make sense of the realm of being, remember the parts of the Republic for our philomethesis, true learning. Remember our experience of being so it can stay with us, so we can keep the benefits, including the diminishing of our problems. Hey, if your addictions are because you think that these physical pleasures are most real, or these fears are most real, causing you problems, blocks, and then you remember, oh no, hang on a second, I experienced reality itself and I can remember it, it will have a diminishing effect on your problems or your addictions. so we can better make sense of it, to remember it. Has that beneficial effect on diminishing our problems. But also we can use it as the model for our art, for our functioning. Whether we're applying it to our next text, the Republic, or whether we apply it to our experience of Nous, the true earth or being. Either way, there are many, many benefits that we get from going into that experience with the practice of the art of the dialectic in our back pockets. And that itself was us seeing the reasons, the causes, the necessity, the beauty for the argument in the text. The argument that we go from loving of learning, which is a repeating of the text, which has the logos, to a practice of the dialectic in our philosophy read through, and then to the phronesis one, then to the fourth one, which is a mystery. So that we have our second reading, not just trusting Socrates, but that was just our reflection of why we're doing it. So it's ours. We understand why we're doing it, which we could say is a kind of dialectic on why the dialectic is a necessary second. Oh, thumbs down. No, thumbs up. Thumbs up. Why the dialectic is a necessary second level of reading, and why we care about it. Why we're gonna go spend our time, our precious time on this planet doing it together. It's going to benefit us in the best possible way. In fact, that was the conclusion of the text. Right at the end, he said, by the way, the last thing we read, the best way of awaiting our being summoned by our allotted destiny, the best way to be good braves, courageous men, humans, courageous humans, and to be of good cheer is don't get wrapped up in pleasures or fashion or clothes or things that deal with adorning the physical body or the pleasures of the physical body. Instead, spend your time love in the pleasures of learning. And that will be adorning yourself with the things that are related to the self, not alien to the self. Desiring the learning and practice of the dialectic, sound-mindedness. Using it in your functioning, that's the art of the dialectic, that's justice, chaos. Having courage to do this. The freedom that you get having your problems diminished or freeing yourself from your problems. Freedom. And leading up to the experience that you are able to remember and make sense of and use. Truth. That's why you should spend your time really loving learning. Philomethesis. And we started by trusting that, and we just went through a fun little reflection to understand for ourselves why it's worth doing. And so, let's do it. Let's jump in. Let's spend our time adorning ourselves with the best possible way, with the things most akin to our true self, desiring the art of the logos, using it all the time if we can, in our relationships with ourselves or with our friends or our loved ones, or anything we do. Having the courage and inspiration and the virility to do this, and enjoying the freedom that we get from doing this, and also being excited about knowing the truth and understanding in the highest possible way. The pleasure of learning. So, lots of good reasons, well, literally the most good reasons by definition, that we should spend our time doing this. That's how we prepare. That's how we await our next journey into the realm of being. Our journey into the invisible realm of Hades. Now, with doing so with good cheer, that we're going to skip the mud parts, the reincarnation parts, the rewards and the various kinds of unpleasant things that happen and the being trapped in cycles of reincarnation parts. But we're going to go to where the phronesis people go. This, spending our time doing this, is kind of a ticket into the real club. The coolest club on the surface of the realm of being, where Socrates and gods and men who've completed their work remain, having escaped, because they've realized this is what we're here to do. And they've been doing it, so they've been training it. And of course, wouldn't you want to be at the highest level of reality with people who have trained themselves to relate in the best possible way, the most beneficial way, the most rational way, with the idea of the highest goal? What are those things? The three elements of art. The highest goal, or the paradigm. The highest kind of understanding, the dialectic. And to use it in the most artful way to benefit. Of course. And if you were the ultimate creator of everything, and you had this kind of club for travelers, adventurers, in the highest possible way, adventuring in the highest levels of reality and beyond reality, then wouldn't you set up that as a condition? You wouldn't want terrible people in that sort of group, ruining it for everyone, shutting down the logos, the people who are claimed to be experts in our world, who are tyrants, who are fascists, who are capitalists, exploiting people. And their claim to be wise is that they can shut down the logos, claim there is no logos, claim there is no reality, claim there is no art. The three things that you would want the people in this club to be using at all times: reality as the paradigm and goal, logos, the dialectic, as our way of thinking and relating in the most inclusive, sane, rational way, and to use both of those to bring everybody up, benefit, art. The three things we read, that the people who are anti-logos shut down the logos, or lovers of contention, philonikos, specifically reject. That's what makes them so smart. I don't need to know an art. There is no art. And in recent history, we can point to people who enjoy cosplaying or pretending to be medical experts by saying, there is no medicine. I am the smartest medical person because I claim there is no art of medicine. It's just a matter of faith or opinion or belief. And I'm going to fight anyone who disagrees with me, right? Lovers of contention, shutting down the logos, rejecting there being an art, so they can pretend to be knowers. If you were at the highest level of reality, would you want that kind of asshole in your group? Ugh, sounds like hell. In fact, one of our puzzles is, how come there's this Tartarus in the afterlife? That's kind of sounds like miserable and terrible. Like hell. Well, yeah, sharing reality with those folks would be hell. Wouldn't it though? Ugh. Because you're out of body, so you're lacking a lot of buffers by having a physical form and that time lag delay as well. So it makes sense that we're practicing the art in our second reading as the best kind of preparation, and why that would be kind of awaiting our allotted destiny or awaiting the divine self to call us up. Let's find that section, divine self. Because that really relates to this awaiting our allotted destiny. Here we go. We really early, page 17. We must purify ourselves from this word self points to what we were just reading, the physical body. Purify ourselves from the physical body, from our ignorance, until the divine self should liberate us. Thus being purified, we've been liberated from our phronesis of the body, our problems, So if phronesis is the highest virtue, you could say there is a kind of vice virtue when it's attached to the body, just like each of the virtues, sound-mindedness or temperance, mastering your desires, only not to desire the art of the logos, but to desire another desire. So it's a kind of fake virtue to master your gambling so you can be a better drinker. In fact, that's curious because when in that part of the text where Socrates talks about that, he calls it a kind of phronesis. So just as there's a shadow of the virtues called vices, there's a shadow of the ultimate virtue, phronesis. So the greatest virtue is phronesis, and the greatest problem would be phronesis of the body. We want phronesis connected not to the physical or the body, but to being. Just curious. So, and when we are liberated from the phronesis, the translator uses mindfulness, but the word is phronesis, of the body, we shall be with a like kind. Interesting. Now, it's here aphronesis, which can be the opposite of phronesis, like the alogos or anti-logos. Aphronesis, which is curious. It's like an anti-phronesis. And this was the conclusion to his doctrine. Purify ourselves from the body until the divine self should liberate us. That's the work we're doing now. This is the doctrine we shall repeat to each other and believe, all those who are right lovers of learning. That's pretty cool. Now, this was the other section, page 20, where he talks about the false virtues or the vices. He said, hey, look, he talks about courage, and then he goes on to the first virtue, temperance or sound-mindedness. To be under the rule of pleasures, there's a lack of discipline because they master certain pleasures in order to be mastered by other pleasures. This then is what we mentioned just now, that they have been made phronesis by a lack of discipline. And he says a similar thing with courage. They're not courageous when submitting to death. They only do so for fear of greater calamities. That's not real courage. We are actually seeking death in the highest possible way. These people who are courageous have the vice version. Just like people who master certain pleasures to be mastered by others, that's vice. They're getting really good in their drinking problem. And he uses the word phronesis here, which is curious. So there is something virtuous in our vices. To be a really good drinker, you do have to master your other pleasures. So vice isn't an absence of the qualities for virtues. It's a misdirection, which again points to that section, the videos on whether you would rather meet a bear in the woods or a man in the woods, because the bear doesn't have the vices. They're just opposites. They're either hungry or they're not. A person can be convinced that this certain kind of pleasure is real and virtuous and have a kind of phronesis directed towards his addiction or his vice or his ignorance, causing him to act in a much worse way than a bear would. Anyway, so the vice virtues, the vices are misdirections of the virtues, and our question is, well, what is the virtues supposed to be directed towards? Our working hypothesis is what we concluded with. Spending our time enjoying the pleasure of learning in the right way, which we just saw. Those who are true lovers of learning have good reason to trust and will repeat and believe this doctrine. But that's at the first stage, philomathesis, lovers of learning. Then you have to get into lovers of philosophy or lovers of wisdom, or philodianoia, true philosophy, loving of understanding. That's what we're doing now. And then we do that to purify ourselves. We enjoy that until the divine self, which we just read, or our allotted destiny summons us. So we're spending our time in the best possible way, even if the many don't think so, even if the many are anti-logos or are convinced by people who are cosplaying as being wise because they reject the logos. Let's find that section. Okay, that's the wrong word. How about defect? So, this is the section. Here we go. Those who spend their time anti-logosing, haters, contradictors, debate bros, shutting people down. God, man, every single YouTube where there's somebody who has wealth or power, that they just talk nonsense, gobbledygook. Well, I think, I don't want to answer questions about politics, but I really want to talk about the anti-woke. Really, the problem isn't that I have all the money and I just play out my ignorance as a fascist. The problem is schools. Yes, them thinkers, those guys who ask questions. The woke people who try to use their brains. I don't like that. Let's go back to the way it was in old times, right, guys? Isn't that what feels familiar and safe? And it's infuriating. Reporters don't know how to ask questions, and they let these people get away with simply spending their time contradicting the logos. That's what Socrates is saying. He predicted our world 2,500 years before it happened. They believe they're most wise, and they alone have thoroughly understood that there is no soundness or stability among the realities. There is no such thing as being. Nobody can know what being is. Nobody can know the mind of God. That's insane. Nobody can experience death and come back and tell us what it's like. Isn't that what they say? And there's no logos. Hey, there is no understanding of how people should harmonize together, how we should run things, how we should understand our soul, how we should understand politics. Sure, there's understanding in some things like medicine and how to build a house, but not the things I want to rule over, that I am most wise in. And finally, there's no rules of art. Surely there isn't a way of taking our paradigm and reality, the ideal, the excellence, taking our understanding through logos that is available to everyone, is not a belief or an opinion or a cult. Everybody can understand. And using both of those things together to objectively benefit all people in a kind of rational, harmonious way, creating a rational species living in harmony with the planet, requiring very little work to serve the needs of the body, so we are freed to spend our time nurturing and taking care of the animals and plants, and spending most of our time taking the care to nurture and foster the development of our souls. Wow, wouldn't that make sense? To use technology in a sustainable, rational, efficient way, collectively, so we can all share in the logos, so we can all experience reality and all integrate both together in an art that will objectively help everyone, always. Wouldn't that be a rational way of being? Imagine. Of course it is. Just saying it's the most obvious thing in the world. But the people who believe they are most wise, says Socrates, even 2,500 years ago, showing why it's important to actually pick up where we left off. We dropped the ball after Socrates. All of the past translations up until now hasn't been the right ones, have been manipulated by these jerks who don't want us to think. Oh wow, a rational, harmonious world and everybody knowing the meaning of life and actively enjoying the process of learning and achieving the meaning of life. Wow, I can't have that because I want to be rich and famous, says all lovers of the body. As we read, all lovers of the body love fame or riches, and all wars are fought in response to that. So these people who want to maintain their ignorance say that there is no logos, there is no reality, and there's no art. There's nothing that's true and firm and capable of being understood, because that would mean there's no need for ignorance and false beliefs and cults and fighting amongst the different false opinions. Everyone can understand, everyone can master the art. What a world. Now, of course, we have to guard against those people that say there's nothing sound in the logos, while bravely and eagerly pursuing true philosophy. And by the way, those who are not lovers of philosophy, but lovers of contention, philonikos, lovers of debate and drama and fighting and all that crap, they will never reach phronesis or ousia. Phronesis or ousia. That state of being where you remember reality or are connected to reality. So they won't know whether the logos under discussions maintains that state of mind. So this is our new standard. When we have practiced the art and we have had this enlightenment, the word is enlightenment here, that's our third level of reading. Going through the text and say, okay, now I'm not just practicing the art of the dialectic. Now I have that state of enlightenment, that nous, that phronesis or ousia. Which of these logos that I'm reading in the Phaedo maintains it, or amplifies it, or nurtures it? So now we are a walking enlightenment, or we're already a walking dialectic, whether we like it or not. We're just playing out side B, because as we remember, the dialectic has side A. What follows if something is? Where's my pen? Here we go. So what if beauty is, which means exists, which means in the realm of being. Then we have the levels, but also we have to do side B. What if it doesn't? So we're already a walking dialectic. What if the art of the dialectic, or what if true philosophy doesn't exist? Yeah, we'd be ruled by people who claim to be wise because they're good at shouting at people, or shutting down people, or abusing people, or silencing people. And they are lovers of fighting, and they pursue riches for their desires, or fame for the honor-seeking part of the soul. They're not lovers of learning. And they will claim there is no reality. There's nothing that is. So anything inside A, beauty is, if justice is, if reality is. No, never. There is no understanding of that, no dialectic, no logos, and there is no use of the art of both of those together to benefit. Yeah, so Socrates predicted. So if we're a walking dialectic anyway, we might as well play the game well, which is our second reading. How can we practice playing the game well? Our third reading will be, when we're connected with this, how can we maintain it, which is curious, which might be a higher level of enlightenment beyond simply the experiences of ousia or being that you get through meditation or drugs or Taoism or Buddhism or all these different isms. because we not just have that experience, how can we maintain that experience and function with that experience in the highest possible way? That's art. And Socrates says, hey, these people who reject all those things, that if you don't pick up what I'm laying down, they will take over and create a crappy world. Yeah, we've played that out for the last 2,500 years. They'll never get that state. Now, it's tragedy for them. But that's giving us what it isn't. We have to flip it. So that means that there is a third reading of what is, because we are not suffering in that problem, because we're doing it. That will be our third reading. So, with all that under our belts, let's do that second reading. Let's jump into that second reading of the text to master the art of the dialectic, prepare ourselves in the way we're supposed to, enjoy the love of learning, awaiting the divine self or our lot of destiny to call us up to that club where the cool kids are, Socrates, men who've completed their work, good daemons, good gods, all of which are fellow travelers and guides, taking us from free of the prison of reincarnation, free of the chains of attachment to our physical senses and physical desires. Take us from freedom from that onto the true surface of being, not in the mud. Join that club. So maybe also we can practice our art of the dialectic with them to go from the realm of being to maybe the third search for causes that Socrates hinted at, but didn't mention, didn't elaborate on. Maybe he's saying, hey, we're going to elaborate that on together. If you go back and you read it again, practicing the art of the dialectic. That's our goal. That's our purpose. So, let's do it. Let's do our purpose. By the way, might be what justice is. Let's be just. And have fun enjoying the pleasures of learning. Let's jump in to our second reading. To learn, practice, and master the art of the dialectic. So, here's our title. The second level of reading. Here's some confetti. So let's jump in. Now let's try to read this a bit differently. Instead of stopping all the way through as we read, let's try and take the pieces in chunks, and then see if we can structure it into a dialectic structure, so we can practice the dialectic. Because Socrates, we know how Socrates is thinking now. He thinks this way, he sees this way, he's going to be functioning in this way. So we are going to look for all of it, look for the dialectic, try and put it in there. We don't have to get it right every time, but we have to practice. And hopefully that will allow us to see the text in a higher way, but also bring our mind to match the level of mind of Socrates, if we can, which is what we want to do. If he's at the level of phronesis, then by reading without interpretation, so that's removing what's false, we're not adding in our own opinions or leaving out what's there, that's interpretation. That's the old way of reading. But also, not just removing what's false, but putting in what's true. See if we can look for the structure of the dialectic, because that's how he thinks. And we understand that now. And in doing both of those things, purification and perfection, removing what's false, practicing what's true, we are raising our minds to the level of Socrates. We're matching him, or being like him, or being pure. And as we've read, the law is the pure reaches the pure. So purifying. And Socrates is at that level of phronesis we're after, that third level. And of course he mentions, by the way, you're Hercules, I'm Iolaus, his assistant, his partner, his assistant. So we do have in the back of our mind, what the heck would be that fourth level of reading beyond Socrates? And hey, we've got a Cebes character for that first level of trust. We've got a Simmias character for that level of philosophy, practicing the art of the dialectic. And we've got that Socrates character for that third level for Anasis. Where does Phaedo come in? The book's called the Phaedo. Here's our Minotaur picture. Could that be that fourth level? Is that what the text is asking us to do? Go from Cebes to Simmias to Socrates to Phaedo? Could that be the final journey through the maze? I don't know. Sounds cool though, doesn't it? Because it's the title of the book. So let's read. And by the way, because we've read it through the first time and we've been reflecting a lot, that's something I should probably bring up. I repeat myself, or I reflect often, and that serves a lot of different purposes. First of all, some people might be new. This could be the first stream that they've watched, the first podcast they've listened to. So although they'll kind of be a little bit in the dark because we've been developing as we go through, and I encourage anybody who is seeing this for the first time to go back to the beginning and watch it in 2x speed maybe. But go through and read along with us. Secondly, I do the repetition because not only to bring new people up to speed, but also to for my own thinking. I find it helps me to restate where I'm at. Philosophy is so rich that it grounds me a little bit, and also puts me in that state of contemplation where if I reflecting on the same thing, it gives, as Socrates mentions in this text, gives space and time for the logos to be called in. Also, we've defined this as what learning is. You trust it and believe it and repeat it. And in the story, they meet up at the jail each morning and talk about self. Also, Socrates says he uses this expression himself. In some of the other texts, if it's worth saying many times. And he often says that in different ways. So we every day we come back to life from our dream world, and we have to reorientate ourselves. And often our dreams will reflect our problems, so it's worth doing. Not only that, advertising. Some people say, well, everybody knows what McDonald's is. Why do they spend all this billions and billions of dollars on advertising? We already know that it exists. Well, there's something about repetition, reminding, re-establishing. Now, of course, marketing and capitalism re-establishes our psyche in a terrible, unjust, bollocks way. Eat bad foods, get addicted to things that I'm like sugar and salts and fats, or just drugs or whatever, drama, so that I can exploit you for money, that kind of crap. But the principle is there. Re-establish ourselves, repeat it. And that's the dialectic too. Once you go through the dialectic, you have what you need to go through it again. So those are all principles behind the idea that I repeat our conclusions often, or try to look at it from a new way, or so lots of reasons why. But I haven't had any complaints yet, so we'll keep going. But maybe we'll see what happens if we read sections. See if I can hold back from my excitement, seeing something and wanting to share it. But because we have read through it already once, we probably will see some connections. Things that we didn't see in our first read through. which is the dialectic. When you go through the stages of, like, we got side A, what if beauty is, let's say that's our dialectic. We'll define it. We'll see how it functions or demonstrates. We'll divide it into its various different ways that it has effects or influences others to others. But then we synthesize it together, gain a new level of seeing from this process, and then analyze it back on the original definition. So we see, which is a kind of turning about, going back to the beginning, just like we're going back to the beginning in our reading, but we have gone back to the beginning with a new level of understanding. That's the final stage, returning to the start. Ooh, what's that noise? Something happened. Oh, I got a follow. Thank you so much, risking it. Oh, cool. Cool name. Socrates says, risk believing my description of the meaning of life and our purpose, and risk it. Of course, he's saying risk it only enough to try it, because then you'll gain the understanding yourself. And then if the understanding works, it will trigger the direct experience of the realm of being. So thanks for the follow. So yeah, so we go back to the beginning, we see what was there in a new way, but we see it with a new level of understanding, which means we have the material to do another dialectic. You've defined beauty, you've seen how it functions, you've seen how those affected by beauty existing, see how they function to others. You've synthesized it all together. Great, awesome. And now that synthesis, you've understood it in a new way, so you can use that unification to better define it, but you've also got a new level of understanding, meaning you've got the material to do a dialectic again. It unfolds, it goes back to the beginning, but when you return, because you've got a higher level of understanding, you end up back at the beginning at a higher level. So it's kind of a spiraling upwards. That's the dialectic, and that's our reading. We're returning back to the beginning with a new level of synthesis. We understand philosophy in a new way. Philosophy is really philodianoia. Philosophy is really the love of understanding the realm of being, what is, through the structure of the dialectic. So another way of defining it, or how does it function or demonstrate, the art of the dialectic. And that's what we are going to demonstrate as we read it again. And you're in luck, Risky, because this text has only been available for about 5 years. So up until now, we haven't been able to read the actual words Socrates has been saying. For 2,500 years, Socrates has been inviting him to play a very interesting game, the best game in town, sometimes called the noblest game. Right. And he outlined a description of how we can evolve, how we can discover our purpose or destiny, and how we can achieve that. He also gave us a description of what happens if we don't pick up what he lays down, what isn't philosophy. And so he pretty much described the last 2,500 years of human history, including where we are right now. But thankfully, in the last 5 years, we've had a translation of the actual terms, so we can actually pick up what he was laying down. So anybody who's been reading Socrates, maybe they gain a lot of benefit from it, but they really missed the game, because each of those key words are part of a giant jigsaw puzzle, and some of them are left out. So you can recognize they're left out, so you can figure out what the answer is. Some of the key words are used only once to unlock the whole thing. There are some key words that change. Wisdom changes to phronesis, which is key because that's a certain kind of spiritual initiation. You've got to figure it out. So to really read, you got to look for puzzles. You're like a Sherlock Holmes, but the The clues you're looking for are the greatest possible clues, the logos that Socrates is sharing with us. Now, up until now, all of those words have been mistranslated. Some of those words that change in a way to show us a key puzzle have been kept the same, translated as the same. So we've really missed 90% of what Socrates has been saying. And it's been crap. But fortunately, we have a translation with a lot of those key terms translated accurately, thanks to Juan Balboa, our translator. You can find a copy for free below. And we've also had the Greek underneath. So if we maybe think, the translator, maybe because every human being has a level of development. We talk about the ladder towards our destiny or our perfection, following the logos upwards, but also the logos casts a shadow, our pathologos, our false beliefs, which keep us chained to fate, destiny and fate. We have to purify ourselves from what's false. Every human being necessarily picks up false beliefs about self, reality, understanding, by that virtue of being a human baby. So we're all at some level of our problem, and we're all climbing the ladder at some level of our perfection. So we're all somewhere on this graph, some level of where we're at, some level of where we're stuck, including even the best translator, Juan Balboa, what we're reading today. So we might have a hunch like, this word, I don't really like the way this word is translated. The Greek is right underneath. And we have internet, so we can look up in real time the actual translation of the Greek because of the internet resources. So very exciting time in history where for the first time in 2,500 years, we have the actual text and we have the technology to even verify for ourselves the words themselves. We don't even have to trust the translator, which is great because the translators up until now have been kind of garbage, if I can say that in the nicest possible way. I mean, that's not fair. They have had a problem, as all humans do. And of course, there have been various different translations, so there have been various different levels of excellence, but also various different levels of influence of their problems. The Phaedo is telling us we've got to do both, purify and perfect. So, you've picked a good time to jump into the game, let's just say. And you're interested in not practicality, great, but perspectives, right? So we're interested in how can we gain Socrates' perspective, or how can we improve our perspective that it's not influenced by interpretation or our problems, but to see reality as it is. And our task to do that, the method to do that, is through something we've discovered in our reading called the dialectic, the structure of understanding itself. And if this is how Socrates is seeing the world, we can practice it by applying it to the text to match our level of seeing to Socrates where he's at. And of course, this not only will help us understand the arguments for ourselves, make them our own. We don't have to just trust Socrates when he says the soul is immortal. We understand it. We also know how to use it, because you can use the dialectic in conversation with yourself or your friends. But also, it's a kind of gateway into the direct experience of the realm of being, or what is. Therefore, Socrates says, many are the people who call themselves spiritual, but this is the one true spiritual tradition. Many are the staff bearers, but few are the actual inspired mystics. And those are the ones who are doing philosophy in this way, the correct way. So we see it spiritual because it's a gateway to the direct experience of the realm of being, what might be called enlightenment. But our method is different from Buddhism, Taoism, Hinduism, all the other isms, because our method is understanding. What the Hindus might call a jnana yoga, or a yoga meaning method, and jnana meaning understanding or intellectual, making it complete. It's no use jumping into the deep end of the pool without first learning how to swim, kind of thing. You need both. So that ladder up to our destiny, you could say, well, one rung of the ladder is our experience, our state of mind, our level of consciousness. The other level is our level of understanding. It's no use having this experience of enlightenment and understanding it very poorly. Or understanding it according to a problem, a fundamental false belief. And many of us have had friends who have had an experience that they walk away thinking that it somehow confirms their ignorance. So we've got to be doing both. This is the start of the second reading. Phaedo. Socrates. He is the guy who wants to know all about this. He says to Phaedo, who's our narrator, Socrates was self, notice, already, the word is self, okay? We've seen a lot about the significance of the word self. First word of the text. What does that mean? Self, Phaedo, was present with Socrates on that day in which he drank the potion in prison, or did you hear of it from another person? Phaedo, self, O Socrates. I mean, I can't help it. Like, to us now, that has so much more significance. Did you hear it from someone else? Are you like a sea beast person? Or were you there? Did you experience it as self? Did you experience the true level of reality being the true earth because you made yourself like it? You purified it. Was self present? Noesis, nous? Or did you hear it from an opinion from somebody else? We at the level of trust. We are at the level of experience. And what the heck does it have to do with self? I don't know, but it's a question already profound as heck that we could only have recognized. It's kind of like, because we've read it, it's kind of like, you might be familiar with some comedians that are like really, really loved by people who are into comedy, like Norm Macdonald. Sometimes we call them a comedian's comedian. Their jokes might sound simple on the surface, like Norm Macdonald famously had a roast of, I think, John Stamos, and everyone's like, these jokes are pretty lame compared to, he's not my favorite comedian. But the people who know comedy know that it's not just the joke he's telling. These, you know, that joke has one thing and then there's a sudden contrast with a second thing. And then if you hold both things in mind, you laugh like, oh, I see the contrast, ha 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 ha. Now I see it in a new way. That's comedy. And we're kind of doing the same thing with the self, or with reality. I used to think it was this way, now I see it in this way. That's an insight. And sometimes we laugh. But a comedian's comedian is different in that when Norm Macdonald makes the average kind of joke, it's not this thing contrasts with this thing. It's both of those things, the joke itself, contrasted with comedy. Sometimes we call that a meta joke. He's making fun. The real contrast is his silly joke compared to what a good joke is. He's making fun of the art itself. So they say, oh, he's a comedian's comedian. If you know comedy, you will like Norm Macdonald. And then because it has this meta level, people can get obsessed with them. Like, oh, I love Norm Macdonald. And they want to show their loved ones, oh, look at this. Look at Norm Macdonald. He's great. And because you have to already have an awareness of what he's doing, you've got to have an awareness of stand up first to get the extra level that when you explain it to your friends or loved ones, they look at you like you're stupid. Like, this isn't very funny. But no, just give it time. Listen, really, like a podcast you're interested in, or like a Tim and Eric or something like that, where it's kind of, it's not just the joke. They're making fun of comedy itself, or they're making fun of TV itself, or they're making fun of, like it's meta, sometimes we call it. And you'll want to explain how great it is to your partner or your friends. And unless they already have that interest and background and understanding, they're not gonna get that extra level, and it's gonna seem kind of lame. But you love it so much because very few jokes work on that level. Normal sitcoms are just that first thing and the contrast. This guy says that thing, but then it sounds sexual, and then the audience laughs and everyone can hear it, and it's, regular sitcom stuff. This is what we're doing now. That first statement is interesting. It works on one level. Socrates wants to know if Phaedo was present with Socrates. And we know that's even more important. If you were there with Socrates, then you probably have a clearer perspective. You're less influenced by other people's opinions. You're less likely to interpret, change it based on your own, leave out what is there or add what isn't there. So already it's significant to most people. But because we've gone through it already, because we already have an interest in stand-up comedy, or because we're already interested in skit comedy, if you're a Tim and Eric fan or something like that, it works on a much higher level. Oh, yeah, he's present with Socrates, but Socrates represents that level of enlightenment when you've escaped the prison of reincarnation. He's on the surface of the realm of being. He's not in the inner sections, in the mud, in the marshlands, where most people go and then they have various rewards and punishments, and then they get kicked back. They're stuck in that cycle of reincarnation. So to be present with Socrates has that different level of meaning. It's to be at that sixth dimension with better men and gods who've completed their work here, escaped the chains of our physical body and the imprisonment of reincarnation. So, was Phaedo at that level? And that was our question we just asked. If Cebes represents that level of trust, if Simmias represents the level of philosophy, practicing the art of the dialectic to gain understanding, or dianoia, if Socrates represents that level of phronesis, that state of enlightenment where you have experienced the realm of being and you've integrated it because you've been practicing it with the virtues and understanding it with the dialectic, what we are calling the sixth dimension. If the physical world is the third, separating your soul from the body is the fourth, the whole realm of being is the fifth, the surface of the realm of being out of reincarnation is the sixth, then to be present with Socrates means you're at the level of phronesis, we're at the sixth dimension, with the better men and gods who've completed their work here. And something that has something to do with self. What the heck is the self? We know the self can go through those stages of growth, but what is the self itself? So, were you present with Socrates at phronesis, and has it somehow tied to yourself? Or were you at that level of below even Cebes, where you trust opinions of other people? So this works on a much richer level. Thankfully, for a lot of the people watching on YouTube, you get it too. So one of the problems with those that higher level of humor is sometimes you can feel pain at not having a shared experience. You want to shake your partner and say, don't you get how funny this is? It's working on a different level. Tim and Eric are geniuses. Norm Macdonald is amazing. He's a genius. So it can be frustrating. I think movies like Borat are so well loved because it gives you that extra level. It's not just the funny situation he's in. We have another level of understanding that, oh no, he's not even that person. He's trying to be as absurd as he possibly can as this fake character and get away with it in real life. So there's an extra level, but everyone except for the person that he's pranking, everyone else is in on it. So you can really laugh at Bruno or Borat or Ali G because it's a shared experience. But something like, something that requires that higher level of understanding, that meta joke like Norm Macdonald, it can be frustrating because it's like, oh, no one else is going to see how funny this really is. And you go, oh, it's kind of like you want to laugh, but it's like sometimes you don't even laugh. You're like, oh, that's just really funny. Ugh. But how can I explain it to my friends? And if you explain a joke, you can destroy it, kind of thing. Kind of like that meme of that girl who has that little puppy and she's like, oh, I love you so much, Mishka. Like you have a kitty and it's like, oh, you're so cute, I want to squish you. But fortunately for us, we are creating a community, the Awakening Philosophy community, and there's a Discord and things. So hopefully when we see this and we go, wow, that's amazing, it is a shared experience. You won't have to be frustrated that, oh, no one's going to realize how profound this first sentence is and how profound the text is for giving us everything in the first sentence. It's all there as a whole that will be unfolded, and you won't see it unless you do what the text is saying you should be doing as the purpose of life. Going through it, remembering it, repeating it, the true love of learning, but also learning the dialectic as you go. And the dialectic comes back around to the start to see the beginning in a new way. We just talked about that. You go through the 4 stages of the dialectic and then you come back to the start to see that definition in a new way. So like, oh, not only is this text brilliantly written, but it has a level of integrity because it's demonstrating the very thing it's defining us to do. It's defining the meaning of life, mastering the art of the dialectic, and it's doing it. There's a level of integrity there. That's brilliant. And we can have that shared experience because we're all fans of comedy here. But not comedy with Norm Macdonald or Tim and Eric that people can get like that obsessive love for because they can see that level, that extra level. But we're all lovers of learning. The true pleasure that we should spend our time in, says Socrates at the end of what we read. So that's cool. We can have a shared experience of the profundity of this text, which is neat. And so we clap. And then confetti? No, just some balloons. Okay. So I just said I'm going to try and read sections and not commentate, but who cares? Were you present with Socrates? Was self present with Socrates, or did you hear it from another person? Self, O Socrates. So, by the way, we also talked about the artful way in which Socrates used the dialectic. Because he used the dialectic to answer people's questions, but also he would give them other instructions or give them other information. So when he showed that the soul isn't just a byproduct of our physical body, he did so in a way while also giving us clues about the nature of virtue. So, a meta level of functioning. Now, Phaedo could be answering Socrates' question. Self. But he could be doing something else. He could be giving instruction. Self, Socrates. You do it. Get to self. Know self. Socrates? Self, Socrates? Maybe. Take it as a question. If it's yours, take it as a hypothesis. Carry it with us. That's what it means to be an adventurer.
I'm looking for someone to share in an...
You're a wizard, Harry. I don't want to eat a monkey.
I don't want to eat a monkey. I want to be an adventurer.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
All right. What then indeed are the kind of logos the man spoke prior to his death? And how did he meet his end? For I would be pleased to hear this. And since neither does anyone at all of the citizens of Philus visit Athens nowadays, let's highlight that, nor has any visitor come here for a long time who would give us a clear report of what happened in regards to this. Except that he drank the potion indeed and died, but had no further details to report. What do we see in that? Well, one of the things we've been reflecting on is how rare is it to be in this game? The citizens don't visit Athens. We've seen the significance of mythology. What does Athens represent? How many people are actually in the true game of philosophy? How many people go from the underworld of Hades to that sixth dimension? How many people go from lovers of senses and opinions to actual lovers of learning? And how many of them can give a clear report? What's the significance of being able to give a clear report? Is that our true learning? To be able to repeat this? Would the dialectic be an even clearer report? Having understanding? Look at all they said was he drank the potion and died. Socrates literally outlined the meaning of life, predicted the course of history for the next 2,500 years, told us the cause of all of our problems that would unfold, told us what we need to solve our problems, not just as a human race, but for our souls, told us about reincarnation, told us about the meaning of life, proved that our soul is immortal, proved that reincarnation has to exist, gave us what we need to move beyond just trusting the proof to being able to understand and give the proof ourselves. Be able to go beyond that to a direct experience or a confirmation to verify in our direct experience that which we trusted and understood and proved. He did all that. Like said the best things you could possibly say. And all that everybody says of the Phaedo is, oh, he drank potion and died. How many people talk about the Phaedo today? How many people move from, okay, maybe not Phyllis, today would be Hollywood. Very few of the people move from Hollywood to Athens nowadays. And those who are aware of the Phaedo say something like, oh, it's just a depiction of how Socrates drank potion and died. Or maybe he said something about the soul. I don't really know. Are we in that predicament? Okay, that's cool. We see a significance of this that we didn't see the first time around. That's at different level. But also we're looking for the dialectic. How is this first sentence a definition? How is this second sentence a demonstration? Okay? Self-present with Socrates. Is that a definition of what the text wants to help us achieve? To make ourselves as Phaedo, the title, the titular character, are we to be like Phaedo and bring ourselves to be present with Socrates, where he is right now in that sixth dimension outside of time and reincarnation? Is that the definition of our goal? Number one. Number two, is the next thing he said a demonstration of that? The Logos, do we bring ourselves present in that level of being through the Logos? Is that how we demonstrate it, how we get there? What about this? Could this be the side B? Many people don't have the Logos, can't give a clear report. Instead, point to the most stupid, mundane, insignificant things. Is this a literal demonstration, or how people would demonstrate or function without the mastery of the Logos? Would they miss all of the awesome source jokes, the meta levels, the meaning, the significance, the literal meaning of life? If so, that could be side B. Let's do it. Let's practice. Let's train up. And so we got pictures like this to illustrate the fact that we are practicing and training. This is us. Hooray. This is us as Socrates training with somebody who is known for spending a lot of time training to prepare for excellence. Goku. That's us on the left. We're Socrates, Super Saiyan. In Super Saiyan training. All right. So first dialectic we can see in the opening sentence. Okay, again, these are hypotheses. We don't know for sure. We do as many as we can, carry them with us, see what pans out, see what is sufficient. And now we have a standard for sufficiency. Not just beautiful, not just necessary, but maybe also triggering that contemplation or nous. So, and of course our third reading, what would be sufficient would be maintain that state of self. But we're on the second level of reading. All right, so we are going to carry lots of dialectics with us. That's our training. Page 1. Now we have Socrates. Definition, which of course we know is self to self. Was self present with Socrates? Self present with Socrates. Okay. What is he defining here? Well, we've seen a lot in this already, haven't we?
Wow.
Now, demonstration or self to others. How does it function? How would you do this? What are the kinds of logos spoken by Socrates? The kind of logos spoken by Soc. And that's been what we've been discovering, haven't we? The dialectic is a kind of logos. It's not the anti-logos that mainstream people who claim to be experts use. Attack the left, attack the right, shut down my opponent, win the debate. By anti-logos, shout the loudest, use your muscles to intimidate. That's what it means to be an alpha. None of that anti-logo stuff or debate. The kind of logos where it's not debate, the dialectic, helpful, friendly, supportive, encouraging. He actually gave us that section where he says, gently encouraging us to participate in self-reflection. And of course, it's not loving of contention or philonikos. People who don't love learning or love the dialectic, they love drama, fighting. I love to fight. Philonikos, right? What do our world leaders love to do at the moment? Love to fight. Lots of money to the weapons. Right? Lots of conflict. We are number one. You are a crap hole country, or you are less. You are minority. The minorities are bad. We are number one. Right? People love it. And what happens on social media? What gets the most clicks? What gets the most fame? So our snowman, this part of the soul, the outward moving part of our psyche, or philo, which means love, timos, lovers of fame, or what gives you the most clicks for money? Wealth. Philo. Chri-matos, philokrimatos, our desiring part of our snowman. They're upside down. They're not ruled by the head of the snowman. What gets you the most fame and money? Drama. Mr. Beast is having a beef with this guy. Hassan is at beef with this guy. This guy is... Could this guy be suing this guy? Logan Paul is suing CoffeeZilla. This is the stuff that comes up on my feed. Trump hates the left. It's liberal snowflakes. Blah, 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 blah. We should fight them and win. That makes us strong and mighty. Look how strong I am. My abs. Because I can fight. Right? Philonikos. Socrates outlined it. He predicted our society. We didn't have to play it out if we listened. So maybe it's time to listen. Time to do what? Learn the kind of logos that Socrates used, different from the ones we were just making fun of for being silly. The kind that define our current world. So, this should be included in the dialectic. Not just what it is, but what it ain't. So, let's move this guy down. Because we know that dialectic isn't just what is, it's what it ain't. So A, what if what it is, and let's do B in green. What it isn't, what it ain't. So, let's get into that text. So, the logos spoken by Socrates. So, that would be what we would need to solve our human problems. Even if Socrates could see, obviously, this was going to happen for the next 2,500 years. I can tell you what's going to happen in 2024. Maybe we should have paid attention and not killed the guy. But so what isn't the logos spoken by Socrates? That would be the way that we could bring self to be present with Socrates at that level of being. Not going to Athens. So that's going to represent something. Not visiting Athens. What would it mean to visit Athens? To visit the text, not reading this text, and not giving a clear report. In detail. Okay, so we can, yeah, he is giving us not clear. Well, first of all, not reading the text or visiting Athens and unclear and no details. Not clear and no, not in detail. This is important because we need to recognize how we'll miss the mark. If we're not reading the text, we're not going to be present with Socrates. Which is significant because Socrates is in that state of self that we call phronesis or true enlightenment, freed from the chains of our body, freed from the prison of reincarnation, in the true earth. We are like fishies. Socrates is on the surface saying, haha, you're like fishies. You have no idea. You don't even know what the earth looks like. So we better make sure that we don't not read the text. We don't stay unclear, and we don't do it without detail. So that's what we're doing now. We're adding the details so we can be clear while in the text. So we're avoiding what it ain't. Side B of the dialectic. Cool. Already, the first two things that have been said. Whoops, did I? Sorry. Right, so not reading the text, not visiting Athens, not clear, not in detail. These things we are not doing because we are in the text. Hooray! We are reading it with clarity. And we are doing the kind of detail that was the way that Socrates was speaking, the dialectic.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
And like Joe Rogan, I don't want to eat a monkey. I want to do this instead.
Wow.
All right, so we've seen side B. Can we see already a side B? So this is what we do. This is part of the problem solving, and this is part of the questions that we've been carrying. What does it mean to read? Why is it important to have word for word the text and not the last 2,000 years of mistranslations? Because maybe these two are given, but this one is hidden. Because then we have to look for the missing part and do the work and solve the puzzle, just like a video game. We keep saying, yes, a video game is well made if it's not a straight walk to the final boss. You have to discover puzzles and discover, this gem is missing from this painting. So when I play Resident Evil, I gotta find the gem and I gotta put it in the missing piece. That will open the trap door. That will take me to the next level. Otherwise, it would be a rubbish game if you weren't solving the puzzles. And a good game is when there's only one missing part and there's only one gem. You got to find the special gem. And hey, the more subtle the puzzle, but rational, not a nonsense puzzle, but once you see it, like, oh yes, I see how it was there. So the more subtle, like a joke, the more subtle you can point to the punchline, the better the puzzle, the better the payoff, the better the game. That's why we need the text to be read with detail, with clarity, in detail, in the kind of way spoken by Socrates, because otherwise we will miss the beauty and the excellence of the way it's written. But also, this is good teaching. Anyone who knows anything about teaching knows that a good teacher will, as subtly as possible, while still making it clear, point to something missing that the student can figure out. So he can have the aha. Maybe by the way, if it's his question, even better. Point to a question so the student can make it his question. That's why koans or given mantras are not as great as this, because those are questions or puzzles given by a guru to somebody meditating or a spiritual student. Given, but if it's yours, or even better. And that's the fine line I'm trying to walk while reading this. I'm finding my own puzzles and I'm sharing it. But also I'm like, yeah, but sometimes I don't want to say it because it's better if they read it and they discover it because it's their question and they figure it out. But I'm kind of balancing it with the idea that who's gonna watch all of these? I think this is like episode 75 of just this text. So if somebody is coming along this far, they probably have a bunch of questions already of their own. So I don't know. I don't know how to walk that line yet, but that's what I'm telling myself. No one's going to be watching all of them. Maybe I'm going to give away one or two, but there's still going to be a lot there for them. And if they have come this far, maybe they've got a bunch of their own anyway. I don't really know, but it's a fine line to walk. So, we have a question here. Well, if we can see the demonstration has A and B, we're missing side B for the definition. What would be the opposite of self being present with Socrates? What isn't philosophy? What isn't our goal? How don't we read this text? This is multiple levels, right? How to gain enlightenment, but also how to read the text itself. So it's like again, like a good video game. If you've ever played the Dark Souls games, one of the reasons why they're so great is and you don't have to read the instruction booklet. While playing the game, it gives you instructions of how to play the game. That's one of the reasons why it's so magical and so beloved. So in the first area, you're kind of working out how to play the game, but you still don't know the goal of the game. You still don't know what you're supposed to be doing. As you play, several hours in, you're still figuring out for yourself from the game what you're supposed to be doing in the game. So the instructions are kind of built in. That's like well-made games. Equally so, not only is there the hidden definition of what the meaning of life or the meaning of philosophy is, but how to read the text. Make sure you go through in detail. Make sure you get clear. Make sure you visit Athens often. You keep going back to the text. Make sure you use the kind of logo spoken by Socrates that we are calling the dialectic. That's what we're doing now. Okay, so what would be not reading the text or not seeking enlightenment? Not being self-present with Socrates. Let's see if we can find it. Okay, were you self-present with Socrates on that day in which he drank the potion? Or did you hear it from another person? Well, that kind of fits. Let's use that. Hearing from another person, which was the very thing I was just talking about. How do I share this activity and this love of learning, the love of true philosophy, while making sure people are reading it themselves, discovering the puzzles for themselves? They're not just hearing it from another person. And ironically, this is the tragedy of the great betrayals of the way philosophy is taught now. When I studied the Republic, we weren't reading the Republic. First of all, we don't actually have the real translations, but even then, we read some other person's opinions about Socrates, which were all bollocks. They're all rubbish. Socrates believed this. He thought the state was this. No, they couldn't be more wrong. It was absurd. Why? Because they don't read the text. They hear it from another person. What else does that? What other traditions don't allow you to, or don't encourage you to, read it from the text, but to hear it from another person? How many people have read the Bible? Almost none. Even how many Christians read the Bible? Almost none. And why would they? It's absurd. It doesn't make sense. None of the books are consistent with each other. The morality is horrible. Lots of gross things happening in it. It's kind of disgusting. Mark is very different from John. John is different from Paul. Paul is different from all of them in the New Testament. There's no consistency. It's absurd. And it's written in a language that's weird. And that translator that we use the modern translations from, the New England and the King James translations, are all written by a translator who tried to sound fancy by speaking in Old English. That wasn't even his own language. How many people read the actual original Greek? None. How many people have read the origin story in the Garden of Eden? None. Ask someone what they think happens in the Garden of Eden. Try it out. I'm not going to tell you what happens, but try it out. What do you think happens in the Garden of Eden story, Christian? Now let's read the text and see how different it is. You'll be surprised how different it is, because they are not in a tradition where they read the text. Specifically, most religious traditions didn't allow you to read the text. They'd kill you if you did, if you even had the text. And even if you did, it wouldn't be in a language you understood. Equally so, other problems we have in the world. How many people are understanding the truth of a harmonious society? How many people are told, hey, just hear it from another person? What do politicians run on? Hope, trust. Hey, believe me, bro. Hope and change. But the change never comes, of course, because hope is absurd. Faith. And we've been talking about in the channel, if you're an apprentice mechanic, if your mechanic was saying, hey, just don't understand for yourself, don't master the kind of logos that I have, but just trust me, bro, you would immediately leave that apprenticeship, because you are just being made a slave to him, dependent on him. You won't develop your own enlightenment or understanding or skill. You won't learn the art of mechanic if, as an apprentice, he says, hey, just trust me. Hear it from another person. The worst thing you can do. You're not even trusting. We talked about true learning being trusting the text and returning to it, visit Athens, and being able to repeat it clearly and in detail, and then master the kind of logos of the dialectic. This is our second reading. Both of those are completely removed from other people's opinions. And I guarantee if you learn philosophy by listening to other people's opinions and not reading the text, you will not learn anything. You'll probably be given the false, and you will end up like most people who do first year philosophy or first year psychology, end up, as Socrates predicted, hating the logos. Many people come into college curious about philosophy, wanting to understand their mind and psychology, and they get fed garbage. behaviorism, physicalism, treated themselves being treated like machines, as though they don't have a mind, as though they're not interested in relationships or understanding our psyche or understanding the excellence of our mind. Garbage. And they'll end up hating it. They most drop out after first year. As Socrates predicted, that we can see if we read the text in detail. So, we're seeing what philosophy isn't, or how we don't read the text. Don't ever learn about the Phaedo from listening to somebody else telling you what the Phaedo is. That's why this is not a regular podcast where it's two people talking about their opinions. We're in the text. See? There it is right there. And confetti. And we're doing the work. That's why we have the blackboard. So, very different sort of podcast. But as we're seeing here, perhaps the best way of doing it. And occasionally we get some chatters in and says, hey, I know what the Phaedo is. Really? Yeah, the Phaedo is just this. Well, what about all this stuff? What about the 3 level, or the second level of reading, the 3rd level of reading, and maybe the 4th level of reading? Or did you just hear it from another person? And by the way, most of those people haven't read it themselves. So doing it right. We see a definition of how to read and what we're interested in doing and what it ain't. Okay, Phaedo. Did you not even hear the news about the way in which the trial took place? Yes, someone did bring news to us about that, but we wondered indeed. That self took place a long time ago. Yet it appears that he was put to death much later. Why is that the case, O Phaedo? So here is it. Did you hear about it from somebody else? I wonder why Phaedo said that. Someone did bring news, but we wondered. That self took place a long time ago. Yet it appears that he was put to death much later. So maybe we could say the trial is a division? If self wants to be present with Socrates at that dimension, we have to use the logos the way Socrates did. Would the trial be an expression of what we just defined as the functioning? How did Socrates demonstrate at the trial? Is that a division? Maybe. But we're talking about Socrates. What's Socrates saying? We wondered. Took place a long time ago. The trial took place a long time ago, but he was put to death much later. Now, wondering is key. Also, here we see the use of self again. So this is giving us a clue. Was self present? Self. So this refers to the one self, ourselves, the goal of philosophy, to know thyself. Of course, we want to know what the heck the self is and what the heck knowledge is, and if there are higher ways of knowing, but ultimately know thyself is the maxim, the principle. But here we're using the same word self in a different way. So that's a clue. As you read, you can see self with a capital S. You can see self, that means like the one self or the honorific. But you can also see self as the particular. We wondered because it took place a long time ago. That's the particular, it. Did you hear about the trial? It took place a long time ago. So one of the ways we're talking about today are the levels of meaning to the jokes. Well, the simple level of meaning would be the it. So you could read the text every time you see the word self, you could put in the word it, the particular. As I mentioned in chat, the practical, the physical. But you can add a different perspective and say, hang on a second, is there a different level of reading I can unlock by when I come across the word self, apply it in the higher reading, the honorific? Because that's how the word self was used and is used in the text. So already we have a key to unlock here, or a clue about how to unlock a higher reading. Why was it the case that self took place a long time ago, but it was appeared to be put to death much later? Interesting. Are we going through that? Are we awaiting a kind of death to meet Socrates where he is? That's coming after we do this self. Read in this kind of way. Does that fit? Sort of. Find these puzzles for yourself. What puzzles and hypotheses and questions can you come up with? Take them with us. Carry them with us. Why was it the case that he was put to death much later? Self came together by a certain destiny. So now there's a third reading of self. Oops. So we have the one self, we have the it, and we have the third reading, the honorific, relating to destiny, to the realm of becoming, the realm of being, and the ultimate, the one self. So this self came together by a certain destiny. It wasn't just it came together, it was participating of destiny. For it happened that the day before the trial, the stern of the ship that the Athenians sent to Delos had been crowned with garlands. So, can we see some divisions in here? Is it Socrates talking about the trial? Is it Phaedo talking about destiny? I like destiny because destiny is a kind of division of what we demonstrated. But on the other hand, so far we've been looking at only what Socrates is saying. So could the trial be a division or a use of the logos of Socrates in a different way? I kind of feel like that could be the one. But Phaedo is dropping some big, heavy-hitting words. Destiny. That's only used a few times in the text. We looked at them today. Self-destiny calls you we are awaiting our allotted destiny to summon us. So destiny comes right at the end as well. So maybe we should do another dialectic for Phaedo. What ship is this then? This is the ship the Athenians say which Theseus once departed, taking 2 groups of 7. Okay, now he goes into some detail. He creates a myth. Just as we have that final big boss that we have to unpack at the end, all of the descriptions of the true earth, the underworld, the levels of Hades, or the levels of being that we get into and reincarnate from. Right here, we have a little practice here. This is only one paragraph, but there's detail. 2 groups of 7. Vowed to Apollo, mission to Delos, serving the god, have to remain pure. So here we have a section that we can exercise our dialectic on. So we need to go back and say, okay, can we see the dialectic being followed by Socrates? And is there a different dialectic happening by Phaedo? And is there a dialectic of the whole? Is this the definition part of the whole text? And then we have to take this division, maybe, sounds like a division, Phaedo giving us a whole big metaphor or myth that we can apply our division to break it down. So we've got a lot of juicy material that we can practice up our dialectic to. And that's really cool because then we can compare how is Socrates' dialectic different than Phaedo's. And that's going to be important because we have a question if that first level of reading, trust and repetition, is CB's, if that second level, wanting to understand for ourselves what we're doing now, is Simius, if Socrates is at that fourth level, phronesis, where he's mastered the art of the dialectic and he has the experience of being, that's where we want to be, present with Socrates there. Then what about that fourth level? Because even these guys are going somewhere. If this is the cause of our physical world, there has to be a cause of that. And could that be represented by Phaedo? Because he's like, we've got Socrates or Phaedo. These are the only 2 characters left that if it's a well-written text, someone should be representing that higher level. What we're calling super ultra mega question dynamite. So if we can unpack a dialectic for Socrates and Phaedo, we could compare the 2 and see which of the 2 might meet that criteria. That's exciting. That's what we'll do next time because we're out of time. So on that cliffhanger, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for the new people in the chat. If you follow along on YouTube, you'll see our past podcasts building up to here. You can join the Discord. There should be a link below. The text is for free below as well. For those who think this is worth sharing and have the means, you can support on Patreon. And I hope to see you next time, where we can jump into this and get to the juicy bits. Fun.
Wow.
Thanks for joining me.